business discussions today. We see that destroying tons of HR departments today. And we see it eating away at any cultural integrity in many corporations today. It is a bullshit shit show that is full of smoke and mirrors, and everyone's kissing everyone's ass, and everyone.
This is Sparta! Welcome to Spartan Leadership. As many of you know, I'm actively establishing a new brand and re-engaging with my true personal brand without the constraints of corporate world. One of the many reasons for the podcast today, and one of the many reasons I'm excited to bring this guest today, David Brier, Google's #1 rebranding expert, best-selling author of Brand Intervention, which I just read in about a day and a half. It's hugely helpful. Also hugely helpful that has like size 30 font, helps you read a little bit quicker. David's a keynote speaker and president of DBD International, a New York City native. David Brier, welcome to the show.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, man.
David, so excited about this. So beyond your bio, I know you're an award-winning, best-selling author. Tell us a little bit more about yourself beyond the bio.
Well, I guess I would say a few things. One is that so I was born in Brooklyn, raised in Queens, started my career in Manhattan, and now I live and work in the Midwest. Actually, on the opposite side of the state where you're in. You know, we're in the same state. You're on the East Coast side, and I'm on the West Coast side. But just to eliminate like any rumors, it is not because of a witness protection program that I'm actually here. Okay, this is where my love of my life, my wife, is from. And when we met, I was operating the East Coast. She was here, and we just kind of like, who's able to actually transplant themselves? Though I will say the idea of moving away from the epicenter of New York, everyone says New York, center of the universe. There was a little bit of like a freak out on my part, but I survived.
No, that's awesome.
See.
Well, you're up north. And for those that don't know, in the great state of Wisconsin, anything above Madison or Milwaukee is up north. But David's up in the North Woods. And you enjoying it so far?
Absolutely. Yeah, especially with just what's been going on. I actually feel like I kind of am blessed because what's been happening in some of the bigger cities around the world has been like, you know what? I'm actually pleasantly, I picked a good place to be.
Yeah. The middle of nowhere, you can actually get outside, breathe the air, be a hunter, a fisher, a gatherer, all that good stuff.
Exactly.
I don't know if you've been converted yet, but I know we talked about old fashions the last time we talked. Have you gotten to try one yet?
I have not gotten to try an old fashioned, but like as we spoke about, I have grown to love, and I know the right places to go to for really good fried cheese curds. Okay.
Yes. Everyone that visits Wisconsin has to get on the fried cheese curd train.
That's right.
All right, so I got what Grant Cardone calls the #1 branding genius in the world. So that's high praise. Let's get right into it.
Yeah.
Who has more attention span, the average human or a goldfish?
Who has more attention span? Actually, the goldfish has more attention span. We actually have less, and it's by a second. So I don't know about you, but all I can say is the few goldfish that were unfortunate to have me as like, hey, you're responsible. This is a gift to you. I killed every goldfish that I was gifted as a kid. You know, I either didn't feed them enough or I overfed them, and I ended up showing up in one morning for each of them, and their belly up, floating down, going, okay. So obviously my attention span was insufficient to each to help them survive.
Well, the goldfish, you said in your book, 9 seconds, the average human 8 seconds, right?
Yeah.
So how does that show up for branding and what you do for businesses? Because this is our attention is continuously divided, whether it's social media, the news media, and everything else in between is fighting for our eyeballs. So your job is to make my brand, any business's brand, front and center and capture those eyeballs for slightly longer so that they buy something from this company or act on that service. How does that play out?
Well, it's not as much a factor of getting them to pay attention longer, but recognizing, you know what? Let me put it in the context of a competitive sport. You want to know what's the weak point of your opponent, right? You want to know. Okay, wait a second. Every time I go like this, they're going to do that, right? It's advantageous to have that intel. Okay, boom. Because otherwise you can't say, okay, now I'm going to plot out the next 5, 6, 8, 10 steps. You're always flying by the seat of your pants. So what happens is how do I take that short attention span and hook them? How do I get someone to hook?
Yeah.
And, it's kind of like, for example, let's take something that probably many of your listeners will know, like David Ogilvy, who is the father of modern advertising. He said like 80 when you do an ad, 80 cents on every dollar is spent on your headline, right? So it's like you go, okay, so wait a second, what is that? That's the headline. That is the hook. That is the thing that makes me stop. And if you're thinking of social media, it's what we call scroll stoppers. You know how we all are. We're scrolling, whether it's Instagram, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's like we're scrolling, and then we do that one thing. It's like whether it was the visual that made us go, "What the hell did I just see?" or the words that made us go, "Excuse me, did I just read that right?"
Yeah.
So it's like it's something that disrupts the normal pace of our everyday operation. That's why the great movies, they're not just giving us the same old regurgitated bullshit. That's the thing. 98% of what's out there is just regurgitated shit. It's redundant shit. And if you're redundant, if I am telling you the same thing, or I'm telling you whether in a discussion or a pitch or freaking people going out on dates, what's the worst date that any of us have ever been on? The person sits down there and they start with the same old thing. Oh, hi, blah, 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 and something that you've heard 50 times before, and you're like, oh my God, there's nothing between those freaking ears, right? You're, bang, instantaneous. So it's that practical. You go, redundancy will make every one of us obsolete. If I've just simply repeated the same old shit you've heard, hey, I'm going to give you blah, 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 blah. And if you act right now, I'll do it for blah, 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 blah. Buy one, get one free.
But wait, there's more.
Yeah, exactly. So that redundancy results in companies and services competing on price. Competing on price is a red flag that says we don't know what the hell we're talking about. We don't know how to differentiate ourselves. All we know is we're going to pitch. All we know is we're going to offer more for less. All that stupid crap. So that's the problem.
Well, that's good. So what you're saying there, and I read this in your book as well, it's not just price, right?
Not at all. Price. Here's the deal. Let's step it back just a couple steps, and you'll see how it all falls into place. So let's say, all right, here it is. So Josh, I want to give you two bottles of water, two different brands. I got this 16-ounce bottle one over here, and this 16-ounce bottle. Which one do you want, man? And you're like, presuming that neither one of them has done a good job of differentiating itself from the other, you're basically saying, okay, here's brand A, bottle of water, 16 ounce. Brand B, bottle of water, 16 ounce.
Isn't it just water?
I don't know which one to pick. It's like, and if you literally there's no differentiation between one or the other, you're like, well, which one's cheaper? It's not because you're cheap. It's not because you're cheap. It's because you're looking, if their value is equal, then you want to get the one for the best price. That's the only differentiator. That's all it is. We, as humans, we recognize things that are different than the same old thing. When we're driving down the road and we just see like a same old car, and then all of a sudden there's this like freaking bam, like just freaking lime green kind of thing that's just like this exotic, and you're like, what the hell was that?
Yeah.
You know? And it was, and some might say, well, it was a really cool design, it was a really blah blah blah. Dude, it was different. Let's
it was
just
different.
Get this clear. It was different. It wasn't like, and it's like, and why do the sharks in Shark Tank notice one pitch over another? When someone walks in and they see it, that person has done the proper intel of that marketplace. They've assessed what the problem is. They've assessed what the consumer need is. They've done it intelligently, and they've done it in a memorable way. I mean, that's why even one of the examples, even in the book, that you saw it, because I showed these befores and afters in the back. I took that one product that was so poorly packaged and then renamed it, did the whole thing. And what did we do? We did delicious, nutritious, nothing suspicious. Which bang is like that. How long did that take me to say? That took me about 1.75 seconds. So now we have the luxury of about 6 more seconds to actually do something with that short attention span. But bam, you're like, wait a second, nothing suspicious. What is it? It's like, and then you find out the product only has between 3 and 5 ingredients. And by the way, you can pronounce every one of them. There's nothing weird.
And it's delicious, like you said.
And it's delicious, right?
That's great. So speaking of Shark Tank, you had Daymond John write the foreword to your book. Tell me or tell the audience about how that relationship started, because I think many people see him as a branding or marketing genius in and of himself.
Absolutely. So what happened was my wife and I had, for like the first about 2 years or so that Shark Tank was on the air. Because now I think they're in their 11th year or something.
Yeah, it's a long-running show.
Long-running show. So my wife and I, we would love, that would be like our guilty pleasure. We could be like, okay, we're hanging, we're just watching. We're watching, we know that the hours broken into these 4 quarters. So everyone has about 12 or so minutes to do their pitch, to do their this, to do their that, and to negotiate and all that kind of stuff, and either walk out with a deal or not. And we love that. We love the dynamic of the whole thing. Well, being a fan of business, being a fan of message, being a fan of story, can I persuade a room? Can I own the room? Or am I going to shrink and is it going to swallow me whole? What the hell is going to happen? So I found it fascinating. So I ended up, I had a column, which you can still find on fastcompany.com. And I would, every week or so, I would write an article of like my observations of things that I would see in branding. Well, I was like, you know what? I'm going to freaking dissect this down and go, what are the traits that make the difference between those that get a deal and those that walk out empty? What are the traits that I see that absolutely resonate and work with the shark?
Yeah.
And so I simply did my own analysis. I was like, here's how to basically own the room, and not get eaten alive when swimming with the sharks, something like that. So I write the article. About a day and a half later, there's a tweet from Daymond John. Now, Daymond and I at this point do not know one another. I just simply make my observations with what Daymond does, what Mark Cuban brings to it, Herzebek, Mr. Wonderful, blah, blah, blah. So I make I point these things out. I make it entertaining, make it visual, do the whole deal. So Daymond literally sends out a tweet that says, best article written on Shark Tank ever.
That's awesome.
And of course, I'm tagged on it because I'm the author. And so I'm like, I see this and I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, so I'm immediately like, what? I'm like, whoa, Daymond, thanks, dude. Right? I'm like, that was awesome. And at that point, I could tell with the speed with which he's responding and how he's responding, this is Daymond. This is not some underling.
Yeah, no intern.
And so I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, I'm inches away from Daymond. I said, where is there an opportunity here? And so I think, and I'm like, so now when you give me an opportunity like that, I turn into the freaking like somewhere between if the Energizer Bunny and Robin Williams like got together and had a child, I'd be that kid. Robin Williams in terms of the ability, the speed of like just connecting dots, and everyone's like, how the hell did they come up with that shit? And just and so I'm like, oh, I can do an article. I want to do an interview. That would be cool. We could do something together, me and Daymond. So I think to myself, what would be like a great headline or something like that? So I come up with it. And this is all happening in like minutes. I'm like, and I said, Daymond, you need a killer freaking slogan. So now I've already converted my headline into the slogan. And he goes, cool, like what? I mean, so we're literally just tweeting back, the message back to each other. And I said, a Daymond is a girl's best friend. And he was like, I love that. I said, let's jump on a call. Let's do it. Let's do an interview. We'll turn that into a thing. I'll do an interview with you, and I'll just like do that. Blah 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 blah. And that's how our relationship started. So, and some of my most highest profile relationships that I have, I've got some ridiculously high profile people in my corner. I noticed they all kind of followed a similar pattern like that. I simply gave. I didn't write the article for Shark Tank with the idea, hey, if I do this, maybe, there wasn't some agenda.
Right.
I just did, I was like, hey, I'm passionate about that. I'm good at observing and dissecting and deconstructing to reverse engineer. And actually, that's why I've been able to make my clients the billions that I've helped them make. I mean, I've made millionaires and billionaires. I mean, I practically have that shit for lunch, but that's what happens.
That's so good. A great story. But B, one of the last things you said, I wanted everyone to hear and lock in on. Givers always get more than takers. And what you just said there is you gave without any expectation of return. Like if you had in your head beforehand that, man, I want Mark Cuban to really respond to this, the Daymond John thing may not have ever happened because that shark responded to you, said it was the best article ever written on the show, and then a blossoming relationship comes from there where now he's writing the foreword to your book because you had no expectation. You just gave.
Yeah. It's totally true. And I also didn't make this mistake, which I see a lot of people do. I see a lot of people get starstruck stupid. I didn't go, ooh, Daymond's this remarkable, sun in the sky, and I'm just like a little shriveling little sprout coming up in the middle of it. That's bullshit. I mean, I have to educate my clients routinely that humility is a crock of shit. If you're a genius at something, don't apologize for it. If you're a genius at something, say, hey, look, I'm freaking brilliant in this area. This other area, not my sweet spot. But here, I'm freaking, I am like, pick the Avenger of your choice. I am that one times 5 in that zone. And just own it, because humility is bullshit. Why would we do the disservice to others and ourselves by making others have to be psychic to discover our brilliance?
Yeah.
What the hell kind of strategy is that?
Well, most people aren't psychics. Like we could get into marriage counseling with that, right? And trying to predict what the other's thinking. We'll save that for a different day. But I think what you said there and what people really need to understand is you're saying humility is bullshit. Where you have a zone of genius, you need to be loud about that and own that in a confident sense, not an arrogant sense. You're also saying that be humble where you're not a genius. Right. So I want people to be clear on that, because humility can be a really good trait, but humility in your zone of genius is what you're saying is bullshit.
Yep.
Awesome.
Well, look, if you're brilliant at something, wouldn't it be, what are you going to watch me kind of, we're going to hang out and be friends for 5 years or 10 years. And then 10 years down the road, you say, oh yeah, I could have helped you with that. I could have taken your net worth and tripled it, and I could have actually taken those losses and eliminated them. But I didn't want to say anything because I thought it was just too braggadocious to say anything. I'm like, what a crock of bullshit that is. And flip side, it's actually the most selfish thing that one could do. It's like, it's ridiculous. It's selfishness in like an inverted way. It's like you're thinking more of yourself than you are of the benefit that you could be to another. That's just nuts.
And there's an art there, right? Is you shot your shot with Daymond, but it was after some back and forth and what can I do to help you? And then all of a sudden you came up with a great line. So there's a play on words from diamonds are a girl's best friend. Daymond is a girl best friend.
Yep.
And it just became this cool thing. He happened to love it, and that took you out from there.
Exactly. And the same thing happened in my next book. I can't give too many details yet, but the person who wrote the foreword to my next book is number 2 to probably one of the most well-known people in the land of entrepreneurs and business. But that also came out in this very similar way. It was just a matter of a complete give. And it was just a complete and sincere give.
Yeah. That last word you use there, sincere. There can't be fake shit. People like that, successful people like yourself, Daymond John, Grant Cardone, whoever it might be, they can read right through fake in an instant. It has to be sincere.
That's right.
Right. All right. So I want to shift gears a little bit. You said in your book, culturally, we are in a I showed up era. What does that mean for our audience?
There's an epidemic, aside from the one that everybody's been focusing on for the past 2 years. That epidemic has been probably growing for the last decade, and it just kind of keeps on growing. And that is the I am entitled. It's like, well, I showed up, therefore I should be recognized. No, bullshit. If you performed, you should be recognized. And it's not that you shouldn't be recognized if you didn't perform, but if you think just because you're breathing air and just because you have a pulse, if you're putting in less effort than another person who's putting in more effort, you should not get equal recognition. That's not the way the world works.
Yes.
So it doesn't work in business. It doesn't work in life. Let's look at it even more really fundamentally. That's like, just imagine a marital partnership, and each of them is just showing up each day. Neither of them is giving anything to the other. Neither of them gives a shit about what they're doing to help the other. Neither of them gives a damn to grow the family unit and make that better. They're just showing up. And therefore, they should be rewarded with food and shelter and pleasures and luxuries, etc.
Just for showing up.
You hear that and you go, what is that? You're freaking nuts. Well, yet every day that happens in business. And it has seeped into culture. Well, I'm work, and it even gets to little blind spots. Well, we worked really hard. Well, we put sweat equity. We invested $2 million into this, and that's our go-to market strategy. We should be recognized because we did that. Bullshit. Now you have to figure out the smart way of doing it. So it's kind of like when Apple came out with the iPod, before the iPhone, before the iPad, the iPod. It was the MP3 player.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well. They weren't the first. They were the third or the fourth. Okay, there was Ryko and there were a few other brands.
Oh, at least I was at Best Buy then, and there was at least 10 other MP3 players before the iPad came out. iPod, not iPad.
Yeah, exactly. So the iPod comes out. Well, the interesting thing is, but yet all of those they were talking about so much memory, so much megabytes, so much. That's all they talked about technical crap. Well, the interesting thing is, Apple came out. Now Apple has a good design aesthetic and real, cool vibe, et cetera, et cetera. Steve Jobs had recently come back and all this kind of stuff, and it goes, okay. But what they talked about was something different. They didn't become the victim of that. Well, we're entitled because we're Apple, right? They could be that. They could have been that stupid. But they didn't. They were like, wait a second, what do we need to communicate in order to actually stand up? So then they come out with those really cool commercials, really colorful, and people dancing with the white earbuds and the wire and just the rectangle on the person's belt pocket and belt clip. And what was it? 1,000 songs in your pocket. Right? It was like, bam! They earned that sale. They earned those eyeballs, and that fit within that freaking little 8-second window that we're talking about. You know? So, but that's the thing. There's too much. I showed up, therefore I'm owed something. You're not owed shit. None of us is owed anything.
That's so good. And you're right about the principles of life. And millennials get a bad rap, but I don't think it's just exclusive to the millennial generation. There's too many people, like you said, in relationships or in business that just show up and expect the world. What you talked about in the relationship space, I think about that's why divorces happen so frequently is you end up being roommates, not partners. Right. And then all of a sudden we drifted apart. It's showing up every day, giving 100-0. And that's what you have to do in your relationship with your spouse as well as your business. Love it.
Yeah. I even was speaking to someone yesterday who asked me a question sort of somewhat similar or somehow it came up. And I said, I have a cure for you. I said, I have a cure for you, an instant cure for when two people get into an argument. She goes, what? I said, well, here's the deal. Let's say a couple gets into an argument. It's like, and of course, what's happening in the argument? One is saying, well, I'm right. The other one's saying, well, I'm right. And they're just, and I said, well, instead of fighting for their own self, they need to expand and now fight for the collective group of that family.
Yes.
You want to resolve the cause of an argument? Stop being insulated into your own little small thing. You need to expand, and that same principle of expansion and taking on more applies to business. The best businesses, the best brands, they don't just go, how are we going to make our business better? No, it's like, how are we going to make our industry better? I even discovered this. I don't know if you know this. Elon Musk, I saw an interview with him within the past week. All of the patents to Tesla are open source. And the person was like, you've open sourced all of your patents? He goes, yes, if somebody can make a better electric vehicle than us, we're only interested in the best electric vehicle. We're not interested in us having to be the one to do it. And right now, if we're the ones doing it, great. But if someone can make one better than us, we want to open the door to make that possible. That's and people, and very few people are going to connect that mentality with the fact that he's the richest man in the world.
Right.
It is. Those two are connected.
They're so connected. I love it. All right. So when branding, you have to be sharp. You practically slice onions with your thoughts. Direct quote from David Brier. So tell us more about being as sharp and slicing onions with your branding.
The bottom line is we live right now we're way too lazy. We're way too quick to put labels on things. Oh, that's just a blank. We do that personally. We do that business-wise. We do that. Oh, that's just a blah, or that's just a fit. And we're lazy in observing. We're lazy in concluding. We're lazy in extrapolating. Right now, I challenge every one of your listeners. You take a look at any leader, thought leader, entrepreneur, successful business person that you know, and you find one that is just kicking their feet up and just coasting on their past glories. None of them are. Daymond is working as hard now as he was in the beginning of his hustle. Grant as hard now as he was in the beginning of his hustle. Freaking Warren Buffett, I mean, Elon Musk. It's like none of these overachievers, quote unquote, are sitting and resting on their laurels. So the bottom line is we have to be consistently sharp, and even he's really his star is rising so fast right now. Alex Hormozy, who's really into like gym launch. His companies right now make $75,000 an hour. $75,000 per hour in a 40-hour work week. And his
Wow.
whole thing is based on this simple fact. He says, look, keep investing money into yourself. He goes, that is the best place that you can actually invest. Keep investing money into yourself. And until the point where you have so much freaking money and your skills are so high that there's no more money to spend anywhere. Because that's the way not only to become incredibly valuable, but that's the way to inflation-proof to become inflation-proof is to up your skills. And so that's how I operate. That's how I basically make sure that my clients operate as well.
And I've seen some of your examples. You are brilliant at this. Is there an example for the audience where you feel like there's a brand, whether you work with them or not, that's slicing onions right now? Like they're so sharp and on top of their game with branding?
I would say, one. I'm not sure if they're probably coming close to slicing onions, but I would say one brand that really stands out is the brand Duluth Trading.
Wisconsin brand.
Yeah, if you're not familiar with them, I would invite you to go to YouTube and just click on Duluth Trading commercials. They have, here's what they do that's brilliant, right? So you look at all these brands that sell stuff. They sell overalls and footwear and underwear. And
Underwear, yeah.
Yeah, and they got all that stuff. Well, they have these 15-second commercials that are black and white. They're illustrated. The way they're illustrated is hysterical. And then, of course, they have their trademark voice. It's like Duluth Trading. It's like that guy with that grizzly voice, right? And it's like, but they're funny. They're different. I can't forget them. I don't go, what are they doing now? And if I even catch one coming on, like during a commercial break, I'll probably stop what I'm doing and watch, because one, I know it's going to last 15 seconds. Two, they always reward me for giving them my attention. And that point cannot be overemphasized. We are in the business of disrupting. All of us are in the business of disrupting. There's no way that any client or any prospective client or customer of ours can come to new conclusions with old information. Right?
Well, that's really good.
They can't come to new conclusions with old information. So the bottom line is like, please bring new information. Help me connect dots I'm not connecting. Help me open my eyes to seeing things and new opportunities where everybody else is going, oh, well, theirs is the same old thing, different day, same shit, different day, blah, blah, blah. It's like, look, and unfortunately, that's the way most people operate until they die. They're doing the same year after year after year, until they die. It's like, what the hell kind of existence is that? I don't know about everybody else. All I know is I refuse to live that way. The people that I have as colleagues and close affiliates and peers and clients, you bring that shit into the room, that shit's going to be freaking 86 like right now.
Yes, I love it. And that's who I want to affiliate myself with as well. People that are green and growing, not ripe and rotting. And that's exactly what you just described, which is awesome. Yep. Duluth, shout out to them. Their corporate headquarters is 20 minutes south of me right now. Awesome. And they're doing a great job. The other one that came to mind for me, and this is a long-standing one, but Aflac's commercials, is they've segmented to like 2 or 3 different market segments that they want to go after. And they have the cavemen, they have the little gecko. Or no, that's Geico. But either way, Aflac has a couple different ones that they'll market out, and they're always clever and will make you pause. Well,
to that point, this is just very, very interesting because very few people know all the specifics. Geico is another brand in that space. So Geico, their ads are just freaky weird, from flow to all this other stuff. But the interesting thing that not everyone knows is Geico stands for Government Employee Insurance Company. That's not very sexy, okay? There ain't nothing about government, employee, and insurance. Having those 3 words, that should actually be like probably a felony, just putting those 3 words in proximity to each other.
Probably.
And so, but government, employee, insurance company, and it's owned by Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway. So you got that the wealthiest, the most successful investor in the history of investing, owning this company, and the ads that they do are the weirdest, quirkiest, like what the hell? But you can't pull your eyes away from them. So again, it's that disruption factor. It's that hook factor. It's that you got those 8 seconds to basically rope me in and make me go, maybe should I stick around or should I just carry on doing what I was doing?
Yep. All right. So what is the 66% rule?
I love the 66% rule. So there's 3 phases of branding. There's pre-sales branding. Every entrepreneur does it. Every business does it. Pre-sales branding, advertising, promotion, whatever, blah. Then there's during the sale or during the delivery branding, right? So if you go to a salon, it's while you're there and you're getting your hair cut or doing whatever, blah, blah, blah. Or you engage in a vendor and you're being serviced by them. It's during that whole, what's that customer experience like? It's not the buyer's journey. They're already a customer, right? And so it's like during that, or they're about to be. And that's usually concludes either the service has been delivered or you've completed your due diligence and now you have paid. And probably 90+% of companies, that's the conclusion of the buyer's experience. The person takes that, goes home, goes to their office, goes wherever. They're done. We collected the money, they got their whatever, and that's it. But it's the post-sales branding,
the last third,
33%, that so many companies ignore. They don't do anything particularly unique. They don't do anything unexpected. Well, why does it work that way? Well, the interesting thing is, so first of all, if you just are doing the first 2, that's 66%. And the businesses that make that mistake of thinking that that's the finish line are losing money. And they're also losing customers. Where you will gain lifelong customers, loyalty, and that element of surprise where you are giving well above and beyond when they expect it is in that last 33%. You didn't expect it, but I gave you something more. I gave you something when you didn't expect it. It was above and beyond expectation. And I'm not even doing it for any return. I'm not doing it for you to now give me your credit card again so I can charge something else. No, it's like, by the way, it's part of the entire journey. So the 66% rule is the fact that, hey, if you're doing that, you literally are forfeiting lifetime value of your customer and you're forfeiting the longevity of your customer. And it is where you can have the greatest impact. And I realized it from a buying experience that I watched with my wife. And it was amazing. And a perfect example that many, many of us can relate to. Apple happens to do this brilliantly. You know, when you get an iPhone or whatever, and you take it home and you take it out of the box. It's like Indiana Jones with one of those things that he uncovered, like unearthed from his ark of life. It's like it slips off perfectly. Like it's not flimsy stuff. It's like it's flawless. And
the packaging's flawless. So you're right.
It's flawless. Does it need to be flawless? No, but everyone else is making a flawed product. And their materials are crappier. Their printing is crappier. Their engineering is crappier. And Apple, it stands heads and heels, and it confirms I made the right choice. It's why year after year after year after year, I can't even. I would be scared to write down how much money I have spent with Apple over the past 30 years. It's probably ridiculous.
Same.
But it's that loyalty. I keep coming back. And I don't negotiate on the price. It's like, oh, can you give me like a 15% discount? No, doesn't happen.
Well, price is only an issue in the absence of value. And Apple is providing that value, right?
Exactly.
I'll give you a couple examples from my fun world, the finer things world. One is Blanton's whiskey, bourbon. Mm-hmm. They ship in a box. Or right, if you buy it, I should say, you're going to get in a box. The bottle's going to be in a nice little satchel bag. And then on that bottle in and of itself, they have the dump date, the barrel number. They have a little horse on top. All of these things in the secondary market you can buy, and there's a market for it on eBay. The bags, the boxes, the little bottle stopper horses on top, all of it is something that is coveted by us drinkers, even when the bottle's empty. That's one. Arturo Fuente is another in the cigar world, very similar to Apple. They have a raving fan base, particularly the Opus line. I'm one of them. Love their brand. But when you get it very much like Apple, there's a outer cardboard box, branded. Open that. Inside box is more the colored part of it, right? So you have the standard cardboard box. Inside the colored box that's describing the, let's say, the 20th anniversary blues. Inside that, leather satchel. Then the box that you actually want to keep that houses the cigars. It's beautiful. And I think they actually were doing this before Apple. So they've created raving fans and people that covet these cigars in a secondary market and pay 2-3 times what they go for retail.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's those little things. And, and sometimes it's not in a luxury premium space like you just described. Sometimes it's even something ordinary, like even DoubleTree. Just give you an example. DoubleTree. It's not nothing to write home about. But last I saw it, they microwave 83,000 chocolate chip cookies a day.
Wow.
When a guest comes, goes into there and arrives, this is after the sale. This is basically after the sale. Now, granted, they're arriving and they're going to stay, but the transaction's already been done.
Yeah.
So what they're getting after the transaction has been done, they're getting that. Oh, by the way, and do you know that they get like thousands of free advertisements on the part of their guests? Who are like, oh, I just got and they take photographs of the freaking
cookie.
And what does it cost? Let's see. It costs probably pennies, whatever the pennies are for the cookie itself, and the time it takes, the 15, 20 seconds, whatever the hell it takes in the microwave, and then handing it to the person and letting them feel like they just got something fresh baked.
From home or something.
It's these particular details that go above and beyond.
And last one I'll give, because it's really simple and really inexpensive. First Form supplements company that a customer of, Andy Frisella owns. Mm-hmm. On each receipt, there's a handwritten note from the employee that packaged, say, that protein powder or protein bar or whatever I got. That's just a thank you. And hope you enjoy. Any other problems or anything, please reach out. Like just a handwritten thank you on my receipt, an invoice that's put in the box.
Yep.
I like it every time. I read it every time.
Exactly.
So that's awesome.
No, we live in it. I mean, that's the thing. That's another pattern interrupt, but there's so much that is dehumanized the processes of everyday business that if we can start to interject and bring back human touches where someone took the time, freaking handwritten note, a handwritten envelope, and I've done that with clients. The return, the ROI on that is disproportionately insane.
I agree. And I love writing handwriting notes. I should say, I don't love it. I love the act of expressing gratitude to that person. Oh,
and before I forget, I'll tell you one other, just as a perfect example, with regard to just conclude this thing of like that 33%. So last year, after a year and a half of not doing any live speaking gigs, I got a call from a buddy, and who was like, David, I'm having a live event in Montana. It's just going to be 35 entrepreneurs. I want you to be the keynote speaker there. And I was like, cool. We arranged, we negotiated, everything was cool, great, done. So I thought to myself, how am I going to make this an absolute fucking mind blower for these guys? How am I going to take it so over the top? And so I was like, I'm going to create a souvenir coin for everyone to have. I'm going to produce these. So each one. So I produced this. I produced this little sucker right here. This coin right here. This sucker has weight to it. This is like cast out of bronze. I designed this, right, and gave this in a little envelope to each person. So when I was done, I handed it out, and it made it the most memorable thing. That's an example, right? I delivered the thing, I did the thing, but bang, there was the remaining 33%. None of them threw that away. They're going to keep it forever. They felt like the most important person in the room, and it's just that additional effort. What did it take me to do that? It took me the hours that it took me to do that and design and create it, and the investment to do that.
Yeah.
That investment has come back to me at least 100x.
It was that extra 1%, and people are probably using it as a golf ball marker. If they're military, it could be seen like a challenge coin.
That's right.
So that's really cool, David. All right, so there's a couple little things I want to get to from the book because they're just great quotes. And then there's one other topic that didn't seem to relate to branding, but I just was curious because I also agree with this. But why don't committees work?
Well, let's see. It basically is, what is it? A committee is usually made up of a bunch of people with varying different degrees, from someone who's just joined the company from 2 weeks ago, to someone who's been with the company for 40 years in accounting, to someone who's been on the front lines as a killer salesperson who actually knows all the objections that people have to buying product or service, to someone that's never sold anything but works in the cafeteria. It's like what? And they're all in the same room, and they all are given the same responsibility to interact and now debate passionately ad nauseum over whether or not something should be done.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but the thing that I know is the most nimble of us wins. The most able to adapt rapidly wins. The most able to respond with as instantaneously as possible wins. If I'm on a freaking battlefield, or if I'm on a court playing a game, and I and I pass something to someone, that they've got to go, think about this. We've already lost the freaking game, man.
Sharon, what would you do?
Hey, Tony, come here. I got a question for you.
Before I catch this ball.
I got the ball here. What do you think I should do? It's like game over, man.
Yeah.
So committees by design. And I had an argument with one person on this because they thought I was talking about a think tank. I wholeheartedly disagree. Client of mine. And I said, why? He goes, well, I've been in. I said, what you're describing is a think tank. I don't have a problem with a think tank with people of expertise who are intelligent and astute and can extrapolate and can do it and don't slow up and bottleneck. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the committee that sits there, and by the time that they've made a decision, first of all, normally the decision that they're going to come up with is going to be a diluted, watered down, the lowest common denominator of what we can all agree on, and what we can agree will offend the least amount of people. Bullshit. You're already dead.
Boom.
I will tell you right now. You are dead. Right there, you died. If part of your criteria for making a decision is how do we offend the least amount of people, it's like you're dead. We see that poisoning a lot of business discussions today. We see that destroying tons of HR departments today. And we see it eating away at any cultural integrity in many corporations today. It is a bullshit shit show that is full of smoke and mirrors, and everyone's kissing everyone's ass, and everyone's scared to be honest with one another, and they're getting nothing done other than being politically acceptable.
There's the quote of the episode right there. It's a bullshit shit show. So at my previous corporation, like big corporation, Fortune 100, committees for everything. So I saw this bog down the process, and I know it wasn't just that corporation. All big corporations, I hope they're listening to your words and heeding your advice right there. Committees do not work for exactly what you just said. That's awesome. All right, let's get back to the branding piece. One of my favorite quotes from the book, and I'm drinking coffee right here. The only thing worse than weak coffee is weak branding. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, for those that have not yet bought the book, and if you're listening to this at this point and you have not yet bought the book, what the hell are you freaking waiting for? What are you, a one-person committee? Buy the book. Go to Amazon. Go to Amazon.com. Go to BarnesandNoble.com. Go to Books A Million. buy the hardcover book. And if you buy the paperback, I don't even want to know you. Okay, buy the hardcover. Just trust me. So here's the thing. The thing is in the book. When I wrote the book, when I started writing the book, I was curious. I went to Amazon.com and I saw that they were like, I was typed in branding and I looked under books. And at the time, there were like 6,500 books that were in existence. 6,500. Okay. Then like about a year or so later, I went and there were like 10,000. Well, I did the math. If you and I were to say, hey, you know what, we're gonna create the Josh and David book reading club, and you and me, we're gonna read one book a day. It would take us over 24 years to read all those 10,000 books.
Wow.
Okay. Now, then today, fast forward to today, there's well over 21,000 books on branding. Yet there wasn't one agreed upon definition. So it's like they this might have been okay, and this might be okay, and blue ocean this, and $100 million offer that, and purple cow, and they're all, and they all touched on those things, but there wasn't an agreed upon definition. And some were like, well, it's how it looks, what people say when you're not in the room. It's like blah 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 blah. It's the emotional thing. It's blah blah. Ugh. Ignore all that shit. It comes down to 4 words, which I cover in the book. Branding is this. It is the art of differentiation. That's what it comes down to. 4 words. The art of differentiation. If you are failing to differentiate, you are not branding. And there's one other thing that corresponds to this whole thing. Sales is harvesting the seeds planted. If one understands that, everything else starts to fall into place. Sales is harvesting the seeds planted. Well, prior to every sale, there were 2 specific things that preceded every sale. That's why there are companies that are just selling enormous amounts of stuff, and they're not driven by a sales army. Okay, it's because of these prior 2 things. So one of the things that precedes every sale is marketing. Well, what's marketing doing? Marketing is executing. Marketing is simply spreading the seeds. That's all they're doing. They don't define what type of seeds there are. They don't define how our seeds are unlike anyone else's. That's what comes before marketing, which is branding. Yep. So if you understand those 3 pillars, you've got sales, harvesting the seeds. You got marketing, which their job is to get the seeds out, spread them wide so they can actually take and blossom. But first, we have to define what the hell those seeds are. That is the art of differentiation. You get that nailed, your marketing becomes 10 times easier, and your sales become an unstoppable machine because you have a foundation that you're actually building.
So good. One of the last things I want to touch on before we run out of time here is you said the greatest brands, entrepreneurs, and creators share one trait. They get very restless when things get comfortable. I resonated with that so much because in business right now, we're in a recession, basically, and I am very aggressive. When things have gone well with my business in the past, and my leadership team has felt this from me, I always wanted to press harder. Like, I was uncomfortable that things were actually going well. Because I know complacency follows that. And so we got to press on the gas harder when things are going well. And people are like, hey, can you just ease off? No, because complacency will lead us into a bad period. So we just got to continue going, continue the momentum and ride it. But if we're in the recession right now, we got to get ultra aggressive with branding, with marketing, with sales, with just paying attention, extra attention to our customers. But I love that quote. Any other additional thoughts? Well,
you really illustrated it well with how you leaned into it. And I think anybody that is a producer that is taking ownership of the momentum that they're creating, and notice that I didn't say taking ownership of growth. I didn't keep it passive. No, the momentum they are creating. Because, we might have a lucky streak every now and again. It's like, oh shit, I tapped in something and I didn't, but then you start to take ownership. The more we take ownership, the more that we're in the driver's seat, and we can actually then navigate through that and start to own it and get bigger than it. Because if we're having any success, people will copy. And if we stay complacent, all of a sudden we now become a commodity. It's like that's why we've always got to be looking. And it's one of the things that I loved from the Steve Jobs biography, which was when they completed the first iPad. I mean, they'd done all their iterations, and then they did it. And it's like, bang, we nailed it. And Steve Jobs was like, awesome, we freaking nailed it. The user experience, the interface, the whole thing, it's awesome, it's great. Da, 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 da. What was the next thing he said? Show me number 2 and show me number 3. We have to be willing to we have to be the ones willing to make our own shit obsolete. Right? My job, you look at any great athlete, any great leader, any great entrepreneur, it's like, who are they competing against themselves? Yeah. What was my high? Good. Then I am now ready to be the one to retire that high and make it old news. I want to make my shit obsolete. And if we have the goal of making our shit obsolete, then we are in beast mode. If we're just gonna, oh man, I'm freaking awesome. That's a little cousin of that entitlement germ that I was talking about earlier. It's like, oh man, I'm great. I did great. Look, you can only pat yourself on the back. So it's like good, excellent, great. Go out, take yourself out to dinner, take yourself on a nice trip. Good. That weekend it's good. Take those 2 days if that's what you got to do. Good. Now get back in the hustle. Get ready to rumble.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think about Nick Saban, Bill Belichick, those coaches that are just historic and will go in the Hall of Fame for sure.
Yeah.
They'll celebrate one night from a championship. Next day, back at it. How do we get better? How do I get better so the team gets better?
Yeah.
It's amazing. So, David, thank you so much for your time today. This was amazing. And if you in the audience have not gotten his book, Brand Intervention, you need to get it now. Go to Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, all the places he mentioned. Tremendous read. You'll get through it in a couple of days. You'll learn some great things beyond what we went through today. For Spartan Leadership, the team here, everybody remember that good and great are the enemies of possible. David, thanks again.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me. I had a blast.
Awesome.